What's up, guys? Okay, this is my day one video of my AP prep week. I have some things to do, so it got a bit delayed, I guess. But okay, here, let's start with AP Euro. I've been working on AP Euro for the past day and a half or so. I've been doing this Princeton review practice exam. It's the third one. And yeah, I've gotten through all of them, but maybe not the long response essay section like DBQ and LEQs because I didn't know how to answer any of them. So if you're like me, you don't know how to answer LEQs, this video will help you. And I'll start with going through my notes for the MCQ sections that I have done. So first, 20th century, like at this point, people have been going through a lot of things like World War I, World War II. So they focus on innovation, basically because of the technologies and stuff, but also like free of mind, open to all. This kind of mindset, which appear in the multiple choice questions. So when you're asked about philosophies about the 20th century, it's likely going to just be something. The answer is just going to be aligning with open to all, freedom of thoughts and like innovative thoughts. Okay, and second, Neoplatonism is like a combination of ancient Greek philosophers like Plato and Christianity. When you're asked about these things, it's basically just a combination of like philosophical thoughts and Christianity, like in religion, I guess, if you don't understand Christianity. But yeah, this is the second thing, and it appears in multiple choice questions frequently. I've never gone through this in my class, so yeah, this was surprising to me. And the third one is usually when you're choosing the correct answers from the multiple choice sections, you gotta see something that is like possibly true or like it's complex, as the DBQs say. There's like a possibility of another thing that can happen. It's argumentative. So yeah, College Board likes these like answers that are like vague. Okay. Fourth one, inflation was one of the things that happened in the Columbian Exchange because the influx of gold has been introduced. Due to like I don't know, like Cortez and Pizarro, they went to the South Americas and then they got a lot of gold. But this actually led to inflation, which I didn't realize. But yeah, this was a really good point. If you ever meet like multiple choice questions like these, just put inflation. Just be reminded of inflation actually. Okay, so and then the fifth one, this is an important one. You got to remember the time periods of things that has happened. For instance, Active supremacy. In my memory, is just like the late 1500s, I guess, because Henry VIII was like during that time. I'll just mention it like that. However, if you were to be asked in a question like when did the first industrial revolution occur? It's basically the late 1700s and the early 1800s. You just gotta remember the time periods. And yeah, actually, what I'm gonna do is just draw a graph of all the things that has happened and plot them into time periods so that I can use them as evidence and stuff. Okay, sixth point. This is also an important one. Um, Focus on how to do like when you're asked which of these followings are not an example of something, or which of these things does not support the prompt or something. So for multiple choice questions, if you have been doing practice problems, you'll see these kind of questions where they ask you something it's not doing this. And when I was doing the practice exam, I was very confused by these. So focus on practicing these as while you are practicing your full length practice exams. Okay, so seven, the Primrose League was basically a league that supports conservative ideas. Sorry, it basically favored imperialistic ideas. One of the people that you should be reminded of is Benjamin Disraeli, if you remember from the AP Euro class. Okay, the eighth important thing was I don't know, the eighth point. Number eight is Germany wanted European dominance while Great Britain wanted imperialism. So an important thing is to know what is the difference between European dominance and imperialism, dude. Because imperialism means you want to go to overseas and exploit lands other than your country. However, European dominance is just you want to be the boss of Europe. Okay, so Germany was European dominance while Great Britain is another one. All right, ninth is yeah, know the difference between ninth and 10th is just basically know the difference between first industrial revolution and second industrial revolution. The first is late 1700s to early 1800s, while the second one is a late 1800s to 1914, basically the World War One. In the first one is basically you can be reminded of the steam engine and all these Enclosure Act, right? And then the second one is like the introduction of internal combustion engines. However, the second one also has like steam engines, so you can mention the similarity between these two revolutions is the steam engine and the uh, mining of coals. Yeah. So the 11th is Sales of the Spirit Act. So this was like during the time where people were just, I guess, like damaged by liquor. So if you remember Sales of the Spirit, it's just related to like this painting. Okay, I'll put it up here. And there will be, this act just says that, there should be no more cheap and damaging liquor for the poor, which is like, they want better lives for the poor people. Okay, so the 12 is empiricism. I didn't know what empiricism means, so I got it right by luck. It basically means you trust on experience only. You should be reminded of Francis Bacon. He was in the late 1500s to early 1600s. By the way, these philosophers, this time periods is very important. I'll cover that later. Okay, 13. The Industrial Revolution combining with Agricultural Revolution is like, during the first like wave of these developments. However, peasants or poor farmers, they were excluded because those private profits were larger than people. So as I mentioned, the Enclosure Act, during that time, you can say like late 1700s to early 1800s, they are really just, they are giving the private owners more land, and they just wanted more like efficiency and profits, so they actually just fenced off these poor people or peasants. And that is some evidence that you can just use for your LEQs or DBQs. And that's an important thing to remember, because the Enclosure Act does not mean, poor people or peasants get to use their land. It's still like they actually got fenced off. So yeah. But 14, in the first industrial revolution, there are not a lot of factory workers because factories weren't like introduced as much. But however, the second industrial revolution, there were a ton of factory workers because of the development of factories, especially in Great Britain. Okay, 15. John Locke was a person that, I didn't know. I wasn't sure. However, I was reminded of like, natural rights of enlightenment, like, the enlightenment time period. So John Locke was the person that focused on life, liberty, and property. You got to remember this person because you can just mention him for all of your enlightenment evidence. So he focused strongly on human rights and inspired the American Revolution. If you can't really remember any people like me, like, I might remember Thomas Hobbes because of his book called Leviathan. However, yeah, if you can't remember any people other than that, other than these, just remember John Locke. John Locke focused on life, liberty, and property, and human rights. Okay, 16. Jesuits were actually the effect of the Protestant Reformation because the Catholic Church wanted to secure its position, and hence it led to people like Erasmus and Ignatius of Loyola spreading Jesuit systems around the world to promote mass education in the church's way. Okay, that's my notes section for the multiple choices. If you have any questions, just comment down below. I'll paste the link to my document. You can just go over it. This is really worthwhile to go over because just you can just listen to me yap about it because I've gone through the 25-page review packet already, and these are the questions that still confuses me. So these are, I guess it's kind of worth to go over. All right, now some sections that I will review, according to my situation, is just for reference. All right, the 20th century philosophy. And the philosophers called I don't know, nihilism or something like that. I mean, the first question of this multiple choice practice exam was about like nihilism, something like that. So I will go over the 20th century, especially with you know after going through all of these anxieties and wars and stuff. And yeah, I'll go over that. And yeah, review Neoplatonism, something like that. All right, so that's the first thing that I will review. And second section that I will review is Enlightenment thinkers in their times, in the time periods as I mentioned. So like Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke, I guess I'll review a bit of that, and just go over their time periods because I want to use them as evidence. And third one, I will definitely like just go over the time slots of what has happened. Excuse me, in the history. So like the time slots, I'll just basically create a time slot. I'll just have a timeline and then plot like every 50 years of what has happened in that period. So that will be really helpful for me just thinking about the things that are mentioned in questions, or for me to answer essays and stuff. And for conclusion, I was best at World War I and World War II and the unification of Germany. I don't know. I just like the history of that. So For the SAQ and long paragraph answers, I guess. So one good thing is to know is that for SAQs you don't have to actually mention the date, though it is useful to just keep the timeline right. If you can remember it, do it. Just put the date on your answer. However, you don't have to actually. I was surprised. You don't have to mention the date. You don't even have to say, "Oh, it's in the late 1800s" or something. If you can remember, do it. But if you know that specific piece of evidence, for instance, John Locke is related to Enlightenment, just say John Locke had this thing. You don't have to say the time. That's for the SAQ section. However, for DBQ and LEQ, if you mention the date, that will actually be very helpful for you to gain some points because that's expressing your overall understanding. However, for SAQ, so you don't have to. All right, that's something very useful because you don't have to waste time on just thinking about the timeline. Okay, for LEQs, I basically messed up because I didn't know how to answer either of these DBQ and LEQs, and I was kind of tired. However, I went through it today. One thing that I learned today is that for AP Euro and for all the histories for APs, they will give you the timeline for the prompts that they will give you. For instance, question one will always be 1450 to 1648 in AP Euro, and then question two and then question three, I'll have the graph here. And at some point, you realize that LEQs are just DBQs, but all additional evidence. That's kind of crazy, but you just have to deal with it. DBQs basically just understand all these documents. I haven't really did the DBQ. I didn't even read the question. A bit because it was about chartism. I didn't know chartism what even chartism was when I was doing it when I was doing the practice exam. So I basically gave it up. Um, I searched up chartism. It's basically like a workman movement that was in the second industrial revolution in Great Britain, and it was people demanding for universal male suffrage. So they were a very radical party that wanted rights within the working class. And yeah, that's about chartism. I didn't do it. Feel free to do it. So LEQs. First, you want to contextualize 3 to 4 sentences, just like the DBQ, with specific evidence. However, you just want to just put it up there. It's not like your English professor that demands you want to analyze or any of these. No, no, no. Just put like a specific evidence on there, and then just say your thesis at the very last 2 sentences or so. Cite why, like specifically why this thing happened. All right. So and then second point, you want to connect your paragraphs with evidence. With evidence, you want to follow this strategy: name, describe, and support it. For instance, name imperialism. That's my evidence. And it's describe it. It just means it is the exploitation of other countries to build your own and then expand around the globe. And then you want to support it. Okay, so Queen Victoria, for instance, in the 1800s, focused on exploiting these countries for the developments of their own of her own country. All right, and then you want to tie it back to the thesis. What is the causation? Maybe the thesis is what is the causation of this thing? This thing is imperialism. So you want to tie it back. Also, third part is the third thing you want to know is that you want to focus on what is the time period. Um, what is the time period of your prompt? You want to lock yourself to that time period. Don't go off topic. For instance, if it is only the 1800s, only cite evidence that is in the 1800s. That is a very stretched point, and people will take the graders will take points off if you go any other time. But contextualization is fine, basically, because you need to go back like 50, 100 years or something like that. So yeah, that's fine. Okay, fourth point, the complexity point. There's actually a very easy way for you to get it. I will do it. This is very effective. The way is two evidence to support, two evidence to challenge. So you need four evidence in total. However, you can group them in the two sections. So two is to support, but two challenges your thesis. However, you want to counter argue them. Sorry, you want to counter argue them. For instance, like if these two evidence say that imperialism is actually a good thing, you want to say, oh, it's not that humane, and because of that time there was like Enlightenment thinkers and like new philosophies and stuff. So you want to say, oh, these might not be a good argument. These might not fit the time era. So yeah, you want to counter argue, and that will present your complex understanding of the scenario. and that will gain you the complexity point. Okay, some final remarks is that I've gotten a 37 out of 55 for the multiple choice section. However, I didn't even try on the LEQ and DBQ. So if I had performed like normally, I would have gotten a 5 out of 7 for DBQ and a 4 out of 6 for LEQ, I guess. But that would have given me a 5 according to the calculator here. Um, so I would just say practice more full length practice exams. Know like what where your score range is, so that you can focus on the sections that you have to review. I've suggested my sections that I have to review. Now you do yours, and then practice on the LEQs from past real exams. Like they'll post past FRQs on the College Board website. Yeah, definitely go over them because LEQ is not something that has been stressed on in my school. So yeah, I will definitely work on LEQs more. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video, I guess. I'll post it later today. See ya.